Hi, my name is Rose. My younger sister Emily once held my hand at our mother's funeral and promised she'd never leave me. But one night she set a glass of wine in front of me, her eyes cold. The bitter taste hit my throat, and then she whispered, "You've lived long enough." That's when I realized my own sister was trying to kill me. My name is Rose, and if you had asked me a year ago what family meant, I would have told you it was everything. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where the smell of fresh coffee and apple pie from my mother's Café pulled neighbors in from blocks away. That cafe wasn't just a business, it was the heart of our family. My mother poured her life into it, and when she passed, she left it to me and my younger sister, Emily. Emily and I were close once, or at least I thought we were. She was 4 years younger than me, the baby of the family. When Dad died early and Mom worked double shifts to keep the cafe running, it was me who tucked Emily into bed, me who walked her to school, me who promised she would always be safe. I believed in that bond. I believed in her. But grief has a strange way of changing people. When Mom died, something inside Emily hardened. She wore black for weeks, barely spoke, but when she finally did, her words cut through me like a blade. "We should sell the cafe," she said flatly. At first I laughed. I thought it was just exhaustion talking. Sell it? Emily, this cafe is Mom's life. It's ours now. We can't just give it away, but her eyes were steady, unblinking. "We need money, Rose. I don't want to be stuck in this town forever. I want a clean break." I shook my head. A clean break from Mom's memory? From everything she worked for? Number. I won't do it. That was the first real crack between us. What I didn't know then was how deep that crack would run, how far she would go to make sure I disappeared. In the months that followed, I poured myself into the cafe. Customers came not just for coffee, but for comfort. Nurses after night shifts, farmers before dawn, couples holding hands over pie. I felt proud. I felt close to Mom every time I unlocked the doors at sunrise. Emily, on the other hand, grew more distant. She rarely showed up to help. When she did, she was irritable, snapping at customers, rolling her eyes at the regulars. Once I overheard her on the phone in the back room, her voice sharp, low. "I'll get the money. Just give me more time." When I walked in, she hung up immediately, her face pale. "Bill collector," she muttered, brushing past me. That was when I realized Emily wasn't just restless. She was in debt, deep debt. Still, I tried to reach her. I offered to help her find work, to manage payments, to talk it through. But she refused every offer, insisting she had it under control. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the sister I once knew. One evening, about 3 months after Mom's passing, Emily surprised me by cooking dinner. The table was set with candles, the smell of roasted chicken filling the kitchen. "We should celebrate," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Celebrate what?" I asked. "Family," she replied smoothly. "Just the two of us holding on to each other." That's what Mom would want, right? Something in me softened. For a moment, I thought maybe we were finding our way back. She poured wine into 2 glasses, the deep red shimmering in the candlelight. "To us," she said, raising her glass. "To us," I echoed, taking a sip. The taste hit me instantly, bitter, metallic, wrong. My throat tightened, my stomach twisting. I set the glass down, my hand trembling. Emily's eyes lingered on me, cool and calculating. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You've lived long enough." My heart pounded as her words sank in. I wanted to ask, to scream, to demand why. But my body betrayed me. Weakness spread through my limbs, my vision blurred. I saw her watching me, expressionless as if she were waiting for me to collapse. I stumbled from my chair, clutching the table for balance. "Emily, what did you do?" She didn't answer. She didn't move. She just tilted her head, like a scientist observing an experiment, and whispered again, almost tenderly, You've always been in the way. The floor tilted beneath me and I fell hard, the wooden boards cold against my cheek. I remember the clatter of my glass tipping over, the red wine spreading like a stain of blood across the tablecloth. Above me, Emily sighed. It'll be easier this way. Everyone will think you drank too much or that your heart gave out. No one will question it. Her footsteps faded as she walked away, leaving me gasping, fighting for breath. In those desperate moments, flashes of memory filled my mind. Mom's laugh as she kneaded dough in the kitchen, Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Emily as a little girl clinging to me during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't leave me, Rose." And here she was, leaving me in the cruelest way possible. I don't remember how long I lay there, the room spinning, my body screaming for air. But then, through the haze, I heard knocking. A voice. "Rose, you in there?" It was Mr. Jenkins, our neighbor, a retired teacher who came by often for coffee and conversation. The door creaked open, and his footsteps hurried toward me. "Dear God, Rose!" he shouted. I felt his hand shaking me, heard the panic in his voice as he called for help. Sirens, flashing lights, the rush of paramedics lifting me onto a stretcher. All of it blurred into fragments. The last thing I saw before the world went black was Emily standing in the doorway, her face pale but dry-eyed, her hands folded neatly in front of her. When I woke in the hospital, tubes in my arms, oxygen in my nose, the doctor told me they had found traces of poison in my system. If I had been left just a little longer, I wouldn't have made it. Emily never visited me, not once. And as I lay there, weak but alive, I understood the truth. My own sister had tried to erase me, and if I didn't act carefully, she might still succeed. The first few days in the hospital blurred together in a haze of fluorescent lights and whispered conversations. Nurses checked my vitals, doctors murmured about toxins and recovery times, and I drifted in and out of restless sleep. My body felt heavy, like lead, but my mind was awake, sharp with fear and something darker, determination. I didn't tell the doctors what I knew. I didn't tell them that my own sister had tried to poison me. Instead, I let them believe I was confused, too weak to remember much of the night. When they asked me what I had eaten, I mumbled something vague about chicken and wine. I needed time. I needed to think. Because if Emily could sit across from me at our kitchen table, smile at me, and then calmly watch me collapse, she was capable of anything. And if she realized I had survived with my memory intact, she would try again. So I played the role of the fragile patient. I smiled weakly when the nurses encouraged me. I acted groggy when the doctor checked my reflexes. I even let my voice shake when I asked, "Will I be okay?" as though I didn't already know the answer. On the third day, Mr. Jenkins visited. His kind, wrinkled face appeared in the doorway, his hands clutching a small bouquet of daisies from his garden. "Rose," he said softly, pulling a chair to my bedside. "You scared us all. The whole town's been asking about you." I tried to smile. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." He shook his head. "Don't you dare apologize. If I hadn't stopped by that night..." His voice cracked, and he cleared his throat. "We're all just glad you're alive." I wanted to tell him everything, that Emily had stood there and watched me die, but the words caught in my throat. Mr. Jenkins was kind, but he was also close to Emily. If he didn't believe me, if he accidentally tipped her off, it could cost me everything. So I just reached for his hand and whispered, "Thank you. You saved my life." Emily showed up 2 days later. She walked in wearing a black turtleneck and sunglasses, as though she were attending a fashion shoot instead of visiting her sister in the hospital. Her perfume filled the room before her voice did. "Rose," she said smoothly, slipping the sunglasses off, "you look better." I studied her face. Not a trace of guilt, not even a flicker. "I guess I was lucky," I murmured. She pulled up a chair, crossing her legs elegantly. The doctors said it might have been food poisoning. You should really be more careful food poisoning. The way she said it made my stomach twist. She was testing me, seeing if I remembered. I forced a weak laugh. Maybe you're right. I don't remember much. Her lips curved into a smile, but her eyes stayed cold. Rest, Rose. Don't worry about the cafe. I'll handle things until you're back on your feet. The cafe, of course. That was the prize she wanted. Thank you, I whispered, pretending to be grateful. She leaned in close, her perfume almost suffocating. Take your time getting better, she said softly. There's no rush. And then she left, her heels clicking down the hall like the ticking of a clock. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her whisper, "You've lived long enough." My pulse raced, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I forced myself to sit up, staring at the window where the moonlight spilled across the floor. I wasn't going to wait for her to try again. I wasn't going to let her win. By the end of the week, I convinced the doctors to discharge me. My voice was steady when I insisted I could rest better at home, that I had friends checking in, that I'd be careful. They hesitated, but eventually they agreed. Emily didn't offer to pick me up. Mr. Jenkins drove me instead, helping me into the house with the same gentle care he'd shown since that night. He fussed over the locks, made sure I had food in the fridge, then promised to check in every evening. As soon as he left, I sat alone in the quiet kitchen, staring at the empty wine glass still on the shelf. My body shivered at the memory, but my mind was already working. Step 1, pretend to be fragile. Let Emily believe she had succeeded in weakening me. Step 2, gather evidence. Step 3, expose her. I began with the cafe. The first morning back, I forced myself out of bed, legs trembling, and walked down the familiar street. Customers greeted me warmly, their voices full of concern. "We heard you were so sick, Rose. Are you okay?" I smiled faintly, nodded, let them believe I was still recovering. Behind the counter, I noticed little changes. Suppliers switched, prices raised, corners cut, Emily's influence. In the office, I rifled through drawers until I found the receipt book. My stomach dropped. There it was, a bulk order from a chemical supplier, dated just a week before my accident. Emily hadn't even bothered to hide it. I slipped the receipt into my purse, my fingers shaking. It wasn't enough to prove anything yet, but it was a start. Over the next few days, I played my part. I let Emily see me limp, let her hear the weakness in my voice. When she asked about the cafe, I told her I trusted her to handle things. Inside, though, I was cataloging everything. Her phone calls taken in hushed tones, her sudden trips out of town, her whispered arguments when she thought no one was listening. One night, I followed her. She drove to a dingy motel on the edge of town, meeting with a man in a leather jacket who handed her a thick envelope. I watched from the shadows, heart hammering, as she counted the money and smiled. I didn't know what deal she had made, but I knew one thing. Emily was deeper into something dangerous than I had imagined, and I was her obstacle. Back at home, I kept a notebook hidden beneath my mattress. Every detail went in: dates, times, receipts, overheard words. I didn't know yet how I would use it, but I knew it was my shield, my weapon. Some nights I felt the weight of it all pressing on me, and doubt crept in. What if no one believed me? What if Emily found out before I was ready? But then I remembered lying on that kitchen floor, the taste of poison in my throat, the sound of her voice telling me I'd lived long enough, and every time I remembered, the fear turned to fire. A week later, Emily hosted a dinner at the cafe. She called it a thank you for the community's support, but I knew better. It was her way of cementing her image, playing the grieving sister who had almost lost everything. I sat quietly at the corner table, my body still weak, but my mind sharper than ever. I watched her laugh, pour drinks, charm the townsfolk. When someone asked about me, she smiled sweetly. Rose is still recovering, bless her heart. But don't worry, I'll keep the cafe running just like Mom wanted." The room applauded. I clenched my fists beneath the table. She was already rewriting the story, turning herself into the hero. But she didn't know that her story was about to unravel. That night, as the cafe emptied and Emily locked up, I stayed behind in the shadows, clutching the receipt I had hidden in my purse. I knew this was just the beginning. The poison hadn't killed me. It had awakened me. And now I was ready to fight back. I knew survival wasn't enough. Escaping death once didn't mean I was safe. Emily was still out there smiling for the neighbors, weaving her lies tighter every day. If I wanted to protect myself and Mom's cafe, I couldn't just endure. I had to confront her. The problem was proof. A single receipt wouldn't convince anyone. Emily had always been clever, always knew how to play innocent. To the outside world, she was the sweet younger sister who had stepped up after tragedy. To me, she was a snake, coiling tighter, waiting for another strike. It began one cold Tuesday evening. I returned home from the cafe and found an envelope slipped under my front door. No name, no note, just a flash drive taped inside. My hands trembled as I carried it to the old laptop in the living room. The screen lit up, files popping open one by one. Bank statements, transactions, all under Emily's name. Thousands of dollars wired to collection agencies, gambling websites, even a luxury boutique in New York. And then the emails. I scrolled, my breath catching as I read. "It'll be done soon. She won't be in the way anymore. Once it's over, I'll have control of the cafe. I'll pay you back double." I pressed my hand to my mouth, my stomach twisting. Whoever had slipped this to me wanted me to know the truth. Emily wasn't just reckless. She was plotting openly. But who had given me this? And why now? The next morning, I found my answer. Mr. Jenkins was waiting outside the cafe, his hat pulled low against the wind. "Rose," he said softly, glancing around. "Can we talk?" Inside, over coffee, he leaned closer. "I've seen things, heard things. Emily doesn't know I noticed, but..." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. He explained that he'd overheard her on the phone outside the cafe one night, promising someone she'd take care of the problem. He didn't have the heart to believe it meant me, but when he saw me nearly die, the pieces clicked. "I know it's not much," he said, sliding another small folder across the table. Inside were printed screenshots of messages Emily had carelessly left open on her laptop at the cafe. "But it's a start." I gripped his hand, my eyes burning. "This is more than a start. This is hope." Still, hope wasn't enough. Emily was planning a community meeting that weekend, inviting townsfolk to discuss the future of the cafe. She had hung posters everywhere, smiling next to a steaming mug of coffee. To the world, she was a caring sister, keeping Mom's dream alive. But I knew the truth. It was a staged event to announce her intention to sell. If I wanted to stop her, that meeting was my stage. The night before, I barely slept. I sat at my kitchen table, documents spread out in front of me. The receipt, the bank transfers, the emails, the folder from Mr. Jenkins. I rehearsed what I would say, my voice breaking as I whispered into the empty room. "She tried to kill me." Those words tasted heavy, dangerous. Part of me still couldn't believe they were real. But another part, stronger now, knew it was the only truth left. The cafe was packed on Saturday evening, every seat filled, neighbors murmuring, the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls drifting through the air. Emily stood at the front, radiant in a tailored dress, her hair perfectly curled. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice warm. "As many of you know, my dear sister Rose has been ill. It hasn't been easy, but I've been doing everything I can to keep our mother's cafe alive." There were nods of approval, sympathetic smiles. Emily clasped her hands dramatically. "But the truth is, it's too much for me alone. We have an opportunity to sell, to make sure Mom's legacy lives on in another way. I hope you'll support me." Applause rippled through the crowd. My stomach turned. I rose slowly from my chair in the back. The room quieted as heads turned. Emily's smile faltered for the first time. "Rose," she said, feigning surprise, "you're here." I stepped forward, clutching the folder against my chest. My legs trembled, but my voice was steady. "Yes, Emily, I'm here, and so is the truth." The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers spread. Emily laughed lightly, though her eyes narrowed. "Sweetheart, you should sit down. You're not well." I opened the folder and pulled out the first sheet. "This is a receipt for chemicals you ordered the week before I collapsed in our kitchen. The same chemicals found in my blood at the hospital." Gasps. People leaned forward. Emily's voice sharpened. "That proves nothing. Anyone could have—" I cut her off, slamming the folder onto the counter. Papers spilled across the surface. Emails, bank records, the screenshots Mr. Jenkins had printed. "This is your handwriting, your accounts, your promises to take care of the problem." The problem was me. The room fell silent. Emily's mask cracked. For a split second, the sweetness drained, replaced by raw anger. Then she laughed, brittle and high-pitched. "She's unstable," Emily announced, turning to the crowd. "You all know she's been sick." The hospital said she was confused. She's imagining things. Murmurs of doubt spread, some siding with her, others glancing at the papers still scattered across the counter. I stepped closer, my voice rising. Was I imagining the taste of poison in my wine? Was I imagining you watching me collapse? Was I imagining your words, "You've lived long enough"? The cafe buzzed with whispers, gasps, shifting feet. Emily's face paled. "From the corner, mister." Jenkins stood. His voice was steady, clear. "I heard you, Emily. I heard you say Rose was a problem, and now I know what you meant." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Emily's composure shattered. Her eyes darted from face to face, desperate for support. "You can't prove anything," she screamed, her voice shrill now, her hands trembling. But the damage was done. The room had turned. I gathered the papers back into the folder, my hands steady. Maybe I can't prove everything tonight. But I can promise you this. I won't be silent anymore, and you will never take this cafe or Mom's memory from me. Emily's chest heaved, her eyes wild. For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, but instead she spun on her heel and stormed out, the bell above the door jangling violently behind her. The room erupted in whispers, questions, shocked glances. Some people rushed to me, touching my arm, murmuring words of support. Others just stared, wide-eyed, their perfect image of Emily shattered. I sank into a chair, my body trembling, now that the adrenaline was fading. But inside, something new stirred, something I hadn't felt since before the poison. Strength. That night, as I walked home beneath the cold stars, I knew the confrontation wasn't over. Emily was wounded, exposed, but not defeated. If anything, she would be more dangerous now, but for the first time, she wasn't the only one holding the story. The town had seen her crack, and I was no longer fighting in silence. The cafe confrontation rattled our entire town. For weeks, people whispered in the grocery aisles, hushed their voices at church, and avoided Emily on the street. But whispers weren't enough. I knew that if I wanted true freedom, I needed more than suspicion and shock. I needed undeniable proof. Emily didn't take her humiliation quietly. The very next day, she filed papers with the county claiming I was mentally unfit to manage the cafe. She even submitted forged documents that suggested I had been drinking heavily, hallucinating, spiraling after Mom's death. It was a clever move. She was trying to flip the story, to paint herself as the responsible sister and me as the fragile one. And if I didn't fight back, the courts could strip me of everything: my home, my business, even my reputation. I couldn't let that happen. With trembling hands, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Detective Harris. A voice answered, gruff but familiar. It's Rose, I said quietly. I need your help. Harris had been a friend of my father's, a man who'd seen enough lies in his career to recognize the truth when it stared him in the face. I explained everything. The poison, the receipt, the emails, the community meeting. There was a long silence on the line. Then he sighed. Rose, if even half of what you're saying is true, we'll build a case. But you need to be ready. Emily won't go down without a fight. I've been fighting all my life, I whispered. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings and evidence gathering. Harris helped me secure the hospital records showing poison in my system. A toxicologist confirmed the match to the chemicals Emily had ordered. Mr. Jenkins gave a sworn statement about what he'd overheard, and then came the real breakthrough. Harris subpoenaed Emily's phone records. Hidden in those texts and voicemails were the pieces we needed, frantic messages to creditors promising money once Rose is gone, and a chilling recording where she said, "It's almost over. The cafe will be mine." When I heard her voice played back in that sterile conference room, my stomach knotted, but my resolve hardened. It wasn't just my word against hers anymore. It was her own voice betraying her. The day of the court hearing, the sky was iron gray, the kind of color that made the whole town feel heavy. I wore Mom's silver locket around my neck, the one she always said gave her strength. Emily arrived in a tailored suit, her hair pinned perfectly, her lawyer at her side. She looked calm, almost smug. When she saw me, she gave the smallest smile as if to say, "This is my stage now." But I wasn't the same woman she'd tried to poison. I wasn't broken anymore. Inside the courtroom, the judge called the case. Emily's lawyer began with a polished speech about family tragedy, about my fragile state of mind, about how Emily had sacrificed everything to keep the cafe afloat. People in the gallery nodded sympathetically. Then it was my turn. I stood, hands trembling slightly as I laid the folder of evidence on the table. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady, "I am not unstable. I am not unfit. I am alive because my sister tried to kill me, and I can prove it." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. One by one, Harris presented the evidence, the chemical receipts, the toxicology reports, the bank transfers, the emails, the phone records. Each piece landed like a hammer, chipping away at the image Emily had built. Finally, Harris pressed play on the recording. Emily's voice filled the room, cold and unmistakable. "It's almost over. The cafe will be mine." The gallery erupted. Even the judge's eyebrows shot up. I turned to Emily. Her face was pale, her hands clenched white around the edge of the table. For once, she had no smile to hide behind. When the judge finally spoke, his words echoed through me. Given the overwhelming evidence, this court finds the defendant, Emily Carter, guilty of attempted murder and fraud. The gavel cracked down. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Emily was led away in handcuffs, her eyes wild, her voice shrieking across the courtroom. "This isn't over, Rose. You think you've won." But her words didn't matter anymore. The fight was over. I had survived. I had proved the truth, and I had won. In the weeks after the trial, the town rallied around me. Customers filled the cafe again, not just for the coffee, but to share their own stories of betrayal, resilience, and survival. Strangers left notes on napkins, words like, "Stay strong," and "You give us hope." I poured their coffee, listened to their stories, and realized something. This cafe wasn't just my mother's legacy anymore. It was mine. It was ours. One evening, as the sun set over the small town, I hosted a community gathering at the cafe. Neighbors filled the space, children laughing in the corner, music playing softly from an old jukebox. I stood at the counter, looking out at the faces, kind, scarred, hopeful, and I spoke. Family doesn't always mean love. Sometimes the ones we trust most hurt us the deepest. But betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of something stronger. I thought I lost everything when my sister tried to take my life. But standing here tonight, I realize I've gained something too: courage, community, and the strength to keep moving forward. Applause filled the room, warm and steady. For the first time, I felt free. Later that night, when the cafe was quiet and the last customers had gone home, I sat alone by the window with a cup of coffee. I opened Mom's locket and whispered into the silence, "I did it, Mom. I survived." Outside, the street was calm, the stars bright over Ohio. I knew scars would remain, on my body, on my heart. But I also knew this: I was no longer defined by betrayal. I was defined by survival. And survival, I had learned, was its own kind of victory. Rose's story reminds us that betrayal can come from the people we least expect, but it doesn't have to define us. She faced lies, poison, and heartbreak, yet she found the strength to rise again and protect her mother's legacy. The core message is simple. Even when trust is broken, resilience can carry us through. If you've ever felt betrayed or abandoned, remember, you are stronger than you think. Share your own story in the comments. You never know who your words might inspire. If Rose's courage and survival moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss more stories where resilience always shines through. Because in the end, businesses can be stolen, trust can be broken, but your strength, your dignity, and your self-respect, those are yours to protect, always.